Ducks fans, are you ready? You are listening to the Ducks and Pucks podcast. This is the #1 home for Anaheim Ducks talk and analysis. Here we go.
Welcome to the show. This is your host, Mike Walters, along with my co-host, Eddie Richard, and we got a good show for you today. We're going to be talking about the IIHF tournament, how Raquel and Lindholm won gold. We're going to talk about some other news with the Ducks involving the coaches and Miller, and of course some big news that came out with Ryan Kesler just yesterday. So we're going to be covering all that. We're also going to talk a little bit about the Stanley Cup. But before we do all that, I want to introduce my new co-host, Eddie Richard. You may know him from doing the DucksFam93 social media accounts. He's a big Ducks fan, and he's been covering them for several years. So before we get started, go ahead and introduce yourself, Eddie.
Well, hey guys, thank you, Mike. I'm Eddie Richard. Some of you guys might know me from Argonzo444 and that wacky DucksFam93 page that I run. A little bit about myself. I was in the Army. I met Mike through social media, which was kind of awesome because I was a Ducks and Pucks fan too. Him and I started talking. I moved back over here, went to a few games, and Mike kind of inspired me to pursue my dream in social media and journalism. So I changed my whole major, and I'm going to school for that. I look forward to being on the show more often and talking hockey and having fun. So thank you, Mike.
Yeah, glad to have you on the show as well. And yeah, it was fun. You know, we used to talk on social media for a couple years, and then when Eddie moved back to California and started going to the games, we started hanging out, and you guys have probably seen us posting photos of us at the games and whatnot. So uh, I'm glad to have you here, and you know, we're going to talk about the Ducks. Obviously, this week there was a little bit of news in the beginning of the week. It didn't seem like a whole lot was going on, and then of course, you know, we'll get to the big news with Kesler, but we'll talk about some of the more minor things that happened first. We had the IIHF World Tournament. You had Raquel and Lindholm. They played in that for Team Sweden, and they ended up winning gold, which was the second time for Team Sweden, you know, back to back. What did you think about their performances, Eddie? They both did pretty good in this tournament.
Yeah, it was awesome. I love to see Raquel and Lindholm having fun. The first time in my whole entire life I ever saw a snow angel done on ice, or a gold angel, I should say,
Yeah,
done on ice. That was it was great having them having fun, celebrating that accomplishment. Hampus Lindholm played about 27 minutes in that last game. Raquel was ranked number 4 in points for the whole tournament with 14. He had 6 goals, 8 assists. Just behind McDavid, Aho, and Kane. And he actually had one more goal than McDavid. So he's still he's still fired. He still has that motivation, and it's glad that he can keep up with the league's best and kind of be that elite status in that tournament.
yeah, absolutely. And as we'll talk about in a little bit with Kessler, Raquel's might have to step up a little bit more next season as well. So that kind of happened this last, you know, little bit. Obviously, the Ducks were eliminated, but we still were able to see Raquel and Lindholm play a little bit. Some of the other news that came out with the team this week is some of the coaching news. Dallas Eakins got an extension, and the assistant coach Marty Wilford, he took over for Trent Yanni with the Ducks, so he got promoted. So a couple of good moves there. What did you think about you know, these two coach moves that the Ducks did, Eddie?
I think it's great. Dallas Eakins, he's a player's coach too. He's awesome. He can be a replacement if things go south, if needed. If not, when Randy Carlisle decides that he's done coaching, we have Dallas Eakins. We haven't really seen his full potential. The only coaching thing he had was with the Edmonton Oilers, but we all know how their seasons has been going for the last few years. And Marty's a really good mentor for our young defenseman. He was the main part of pretty much developing our young defensemen how they are now. So hopefully we can see that, when he's brought up now. So hopefully we can just see that progress and they can just develop more into hopefully potential, that they can get. So
Yeah,
exciting news.
yeah, I mean, you bring up a good point too. I think when the whole thing went down with Boudreaux and then Carlisle came in, there was discussion. Eakin's name had come up then, so I think it's definitely something to watch. You never know what's going to happen with Carlisle. Obviously, a lot of you out there are not happy with the way things went with Carlisle this season, understandably so. So I would keep an eye on Dallas Eakins. He may be one to look down, the road and see what happens. So I think they're both good moves. I think they'll help out the Ducks, especially on defense too, with Wilford coming up, and they're probably going to need it coming up this next season. Another issue that came up this week, we heard about Ryan Miller. He ended up having surgery on his left wrist. He had a bone fragment removed, which he had issues with during the season. It shouldn't be a big deal. They're saying it's about 6 weeks, Eddie, that he's going to be out, but he should be good to go. And I think I look forward to him, helping out in net with Gibson next season.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be great. I mean, the story of the Ducks last season's injuries. So I wasn't really too surprised hearing that Miller was injured. That was just kind of yeah, just pretty much a nail in the coffin for us this season. I don't know if you want to talk about his son trolling him.
Yeah, yeah. I mean that that was pretty funny. If you didn't see it, Miller's. I know. I'm just laughing about it, thinking about it. Miller's wife posted a tweet with their son, and they're saying that whenever their son wants to irritate him or get them mad, that he says "Let's go Kings." So I just thought, holy crap, that was pretty funny, and that tweet took off. I thought that was pretty funny, Eddie.
Oh yeah, it was just it's hilarious. I mean, it probably could have been worse if he said "Let's go Sharks" or something like that. We got swept on that, but I mean, that's why they call them terrible threes, I guess. I mean,
Yeah,
so
yeah, it was pretty funny to see that. I mean, they tweet out stuff, here and there that's entertaining and whatnot. And then obviously the other big injury news that came out yesterday is the Ryan Kesler news. You had Sportsnet Elliotte Friedman. He had his article that he posted, the 31 thoughts. And I'll just really read to you what was said in there, and then Eddie and I can kind of digest this for a little bit. It's going to kind of lead into a discussion of maybe free agency and some things. I was going to hold off on doing that, until a later podcast, obviously when July rolls around. But given what's happened now, it's kind of something that we got to talk about. But here's what was said in the article, in case you missed it. It's linked in our article, and kind of summarized a little bit. But under his article, under number 4, it says we probably won't know the truth until training camp, but there's a chance Ryan Kesler does not play in 2018-19. Adams Center gutted out, Anaheim Center gutted out through 48 regular season and playoff games. His discomfort and pain obvious to teammates and opponents alike. From what I understand, he will not be having surgery. Instead, he's undergoing some aggressive rehab and treatment in an effort to improve his hip area. The team and agent are not commenting, and but word is he is not interested in retiring. He wants to play and is doing everything he can to get there. But it might be a situation where he sits out and tries to come back in September 2019. So this is some huge news, Eddie. I mean, when you first heard this, what do you goes through your mind? I mean, obviously all the stuff that happened last season, but what are you thinking?
honestly, I knifed through my heart. I was like, no. I thought we were over the injury stuff. That was all last season. I thought we are gonna have a healthy Kessler, him doing Kessler things again. This is a huge blow. I
Yeah,
mean, we all had hopes, and yeah, Ducks started like last season with so many injuries, and we're gonna change that this season. But then hearing this, it just now makes me think like, okay, so all eyes are on Bob Murray now. Like, what are you gonna do? Like, how are you gonna rectify this and bring a player in to step in Kessler's place, which is extremely hard to do the way he plays.
yeah, I think you're absolutely right, and I think there's a couple different options that we're gonna have to look at. And obviously one of the fan questions too asks about that. I mean, people are trying to figure out what's going on. How do they feel his role? We had Drew Erickson asked us that question. What do they do? Did they go inside or did they go outside? And I think this is we'll kind of have to take this in several parts, but I think we can kind of look inside first, Eddie, and I mean, one option is obviously Sam Steele comes to mind. If you want to bring him up and play him and put him in there, you also have Adam Henrique, which the Ducks obviously want to work on getting him an extension. So you have Getzloff, you have Henrique. You could bring up Sam Steele. I don't know if that'd be rushing him. You can kind of chime in on that. But what do you think in terms of internally, before we look to the free agents or any kind of trades, what do you think the Ducks could do within the organization if indeed Kesler misses next season?
I mean, Sam Stowe's a great option. I would look into that because I mean he's developed. I think he's playing some of the best hockey he's playing where he's at right now, and he's looking for that extra challenge. Colorado brought up a lot of their rookies, and they had a 19-year-old defenseman playing top line minutes, and it worked out for them. So, I mean, like why not? Let's try him out. Let's see how he plugs in. Let's see how he fits in and go from there to start. There's other options out there, but it never really hurts to bring in a rookie. If he's not ready, send him right back down. I mean, it's not going to really hurt anyone. And he understands his role as a hockey player, so he's not going to get his feelings hurt if he gets sent down right away. That's just the way the game goes. So
Well, then another option too that we talked about before the show is with Raquel too. I mean, obviously he's been playing the wing, but he can play center. So that's another possibility. If the Ducks don't look outside, they could, roll with him maybe as a third line center or second line center, but depending on how he and Henrique want to work out. That's another option too, Eddie. What do you think about trying to do that? If the Ducks aren't able to go out and get somebody else.
I would do that. Raquel is at center too. We haven't really seen him that much in the center, so that can probably potentially be a pretty good option for us. He can probably thrive, and who knows? We haven't seen his full potential yet. He's still young. He's still developing, and it's awesome to actually say this, but Raquel isn't that developed player and superstar yet. He's putting up those numbers, but there's still, in my opinion, I see he has a lot more potential to give, and he still has a lot more developing to go. So why not throw him in the center and try it out? He can be between Cogliano and Silverberg. It's going to be a dangerous line potentially.
Yeah, I mean that's an option too. I mean, trying to refill that spot, that's another thing they have to figure out is, are you going to keep Silverberg and Caggiano together, and then how are you going to, switch that around as far as with Henrique and Raquel? So I definitely think that those are some options like you talked about that can work. Sam Steele bringing him up and trying to, get him some ice time as well might be another option that they can look at. So those are some things that the Ducks can look at inside the organization to try to make this work. I mean, it's a huge blow. I mean, it may work um, out okay getting Eves back, but now you're losing another spot in the center. So, it's just unfortunate. I mean, when that news came out, obviously no one else has said anything, but Elliotte Friedman's a pretty good source, so you have to go with what he said, and it makes sense if this is being weighed out. The team hasn't said anything yet. I don't know if they will say anything soon. You think that they would now that it's kind of been, it's all over the place now. As soon as it went out on that 31 Thoughts article on Sportsnet, it just kind of exploded and it went out on, our website and a few other obvious Ducks news related websites. So it's out there. And I think the Ducks are going to have to try to figure out something, and this kind of leads into the other part where it kind of changes what's going on now with the free agency. We know that we can kind of talk about this too. That Kane is off the board. He got his big deal with San Jose, which is kind of hurts, and obviously we don't want to go back to the free agency at the trade deadline and what happened. But with the free agency coming up, what do you think? About the Kane thing. I mean, he got a big deal. Do you think San Jose overpaid for him, or what do you think about that part?
Absolutely. 7 years at 7 million, 49 million total. That is outlandish. It's crazy. He's a player. Yeah, yeah, he's a big physical player, but this is his second season. That's actually it's the second time he actually like matched his totals and had a decent season. And I'm quoting my little fingers right there. He he has a lot of off ice issues too with the sexual assault allegation, which got dismissed. But he also had a battery charge that got dismissed as part of a plea deal, and not to mention his, I guess him not getting along with players in the locker room. $7 million is wow. I I mean, I'm glad that we didn't pay that money because I would have been, whoa, what are you doing? And I read uh, the first season of his contract, he's going to make $9 million. And then he's going to go for a second, making eight, then six, then seven, then six again, and yeah, it's just I don't know, it's way too much. I would have loved for our GM to actually do something during the trade deadline like we all did, but now seeing this contract, it's just I'm glad San Jose signed him for that deal. That's good for them. But I mean, I don't. That's way too much. Way too much money.
Yeah, and see, this is the problem that we're getting into is those of you out there that thought, oh, okay, the Ducks maybe could have went and got Kane, and obviously that's that was off the table before this Kesler news came out. The problem is that amount of money. If you look at Cap Friendly right now, Cap Friendly says that the Ducks have about 9 million in cap space. And kind of looking at this list of what the Ducks need to do in the situation that they're in, this is kind of where they're at right now. If you look at the forward situation, they have Derek Grant, Antoine Vermette, Chris Kelly, Jason Chimera, and JT Brown. They're all your UFAs, unrestricted free agents in the forwards. And then you've got Casse and Richie that are your restricted free agents. So you've got that, that they're looking at. They obviously want to keep Casse. I talked before about maybe trading Richie, which may be something that'll come up, around July. We'll see. But you've got these other UFAs. I don't think most of these guys come back. I don't think Grant comes back. Kelly, Chimera, Brown. I don't know if most of these guys come back. I know Vermette was kind of up in the air. I mean, I don't know if that's changed now with Kesler out. If they want to at least bring him in and keep him for the fourth line, that may be a possibility. But I don't expect a lot of these guys to come back. But you definitely got to get Richie and Casse figured out. And then when you look at defense. Obviously, Bieksa, he's a UFA. He's not coming back. We know that. I know a lot of you are so sad about that. but you but you've also got Walensky and Montour that are RFAs. So you got to get all those things figured out. And with Kesler, it sounds like he still wants to play. And that's another concern. So you're trying to sign these RFAs. You've got at least four of them here that you want to sign and bring back. That's going to take up some chunk of this money. And then you're trying to figure out if Kessler's going to be able to go or not. He's got 4 years to go on his contract. It's 6.8 million. So this is kind of a tough situation, Eddie, that the Ducks are now in because you're trying to sign some of these guys, and then if you're trying to go out and get a big name player, which we'll talk about that in a minute, but a big name player like Kane, that's not really going to work out with the contracts that the Ducks have right now.
No, 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 no. It's not. And Coste should be, number one priority, and he's gonna like demand, a big raise, and he deserves it. He's been playing amazing, and we watched him from, like who's this guy? We can't even pronounce his name, and now it's, the catchphrase "Kosh me outside" means him. So yeah, we have to sign these players first. I'm not opposed to trading Richie, and I always said that numerous times. I know I might get the stones thrown at me by some fans, but I mean Richie hasn't really developed the player that we all hope that he would be. Hopefully, he proves me wrong, and I really hope next season if he's with the Ducks, he changes his step, and you guys can all tell me I'm wrong, and I'll gladly admit that I'm wrong, but I mean, Ducks are in a tough spot now, and really hope Kessler can come around or starts healing up. But I don't want him to rush anything. His health and his recovery is the most important thing besides hockey. I know it's really weird for me to say that because I love hockey so much, but I mean, I never want to see a player from any team have to deal with health issues and pretty much playing injured. So.
Yeah, which I mean that's basically been the theme of this Ducks last season, and now here we are in the summer, and we're still talking about injuries. I mean it's crazy. We're talking about Miller, and now we're talking about Kesler. I think one thing that some people debate is did the Ducks bring Kesler back too soon? And I mean, that was something that we had talked about during the season, because you didn't really know 100%. You knew that he was doing a lot of things to get back and get on the ice. He had talked about how he had to do, a lot of things before games to get ready and whatnot, to get into his stride, his conditioning, his hip issue, and all that kind of stuff. And I guess with this news, I mean, like we said, it's only Elliotte Friedman. I mean, again, a good source. But it almost looks like, Eddie, that the Ducks maybe rushed Kesler back too soon last season.
Um, I don't know. Kessler seems like the type of player that kind of stubborn in his own way. So if he wants to do something, he's gonna do it, regardless what anyone says. I think, yeah, you're right, 100%. He was brought back too soon because we all saw it in his play. He wasn't the same Kessler that we were used to. He had that, he didn't have the extra step, the extra hitting. He was just, he was kind of average compared to what he can be. But I think Kessler himself thought that he can just power through it and stuff. Um, but yeah, it was it was kind of too soon, I guess. I mean, he's still dealing with the injury. He's still recovering. He should have had that extra thing. The Ducks should have noticed that, halfway through, like when he played those first 48 games, that hey, he's not the same player. Let's get him some more rehab and let's get him back to 100%, not 70% or lower.
Yeah, I think that was part of the concern during the season, and then, obviously the playoffs the year before when he had, going against Nashville, you could tell he was getting banged up and, he just wasn't quite where he was at. And now we saw that this last season. So it's a big predicament that the Ducks are in now because I think you're right. I think Kessler is a little bit maybe stubborn, but I mean at the same time he's a competitor. He wants to go out there and he wants to,
Yes.
compete. You play hockey, you understand what it's like to go through injuries and whatnot, and you don't like to sit out. And the competitor in him wants to do that. So I can't you can't fault him for that at all. So like the article mentioned, it said that he doesn't want to retire, he doesn't want to sit out, he wants to continue to play. So a lot of unanswered questions until of course the team or the agent or himself come out and say something. But in the meantime, I mean, if this is that serious, the Ducks are going to have to try to figure out what they're going to do. As we talked about, there's some options within the team and things that they can do. We were going to have well, we still are going to have a free agency show coming up, but we'll kind of talk about it now because of what's going on with Kesler. So, if the Ducks do sign the RFAs, like you mentioned, Coste is a big part of that. Ritchie, we think might get traded, but they might still re-sign him. And of course, you want to keep Montour, and then at a lesser extent, Walensky as well. So you've got those guys in there. But if they're going to go out and look, and we can look at different centers out there in the league, and I mean, we can look at the ones that can fill the hole, the ones that are looking good, and just looking at the unrestricted free agents right now, not really looking at any of those that are RFAs. I mean, some names that are out there, and I'm just throwing these out there: are Joe Thornton, Paul Stastny, John Tavares, Tyler Bozak. These are some of the names that you look. Mark Letestu. There's some out there. Obviously, Vermette's in this list, as we already had mentioned. So you've got some of these guys. The problem, though, I think with some of this is going to be the cost too. You look at Stastny's contract. 7.5 million. Tavares is at 6 million. So there's some high numbers for some of these big name centers that are out there if the Ducks do want to go get them. But what do you think? Any of these names, do you think the Ducks should try to pursue, Eddie? Some of them are a higher end of a cost, that we're looking at. What do you think?
Well, yeah, Tavares would be awesome. I mean, we all know that, but the reality of getting him is not going to be that. So what you talked about before, we can bring up Sam Steele or move Raquel to center. So we can actually look at Rick Nash. He's a big power forward. He plays left wing, and I mean he made about 5 point something, five. Oh no, he made 7.8 million last season, but he declined in numbers. So we can probably get him. How about 5 or 6 million? That'd be a good option to look for. Another one would be Paul Stastny. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I feel you. I mean, I know Nash has been one that's been mentioned before. I like Stastny. I mean, that's a good option. I think some of this that, the Ducks, it's kind of weird, but they can make some room if they want, and it's a weird situation because they did it with Eves last year, where they put him on the LTR. So they might go that route, and they might do that with Kesler, and they could maybe be able to get a bigger name player, like you said. I like Stastny. I mean, that's one that I think's maybe a little bit more doable. I mean, obviously Tavares and his numbers. I mean, he had 83 points last year. I mean, he did great. 36 goals. I don't know, if they can afford him, unfortunately. But some of those guys might work. Like you said, if you bring up Steele and move Raquel over, and then try to go for a Nash or another type winger, that's another option too. So there's some things to look at. I mean, obviously we're just kind of touching on it right now because it's just early and it's fresh and everything like that. So we'll try and figure out, as the free agency comes up sooner, we'll have a more detailed show on that, and we'll talk about what we think more in depth about who might be the one that the Ducks go after, because there may be more news at that time. But at least now, initially, I think those are some of the options. I like what you're throwing out there. I mean, if they wanted to go cheap, you put Raquel at center, you have Henrique in there, you get him his contract extension, you bring up Steele, and then maybe you keep Vermette. I mean, that's another thing. I mean, when the season ended, I would have said Vermette was gone, but obviously, of course, now with all this stuff changed, I would like to see the Ducks go big, honestly, Eddie, and that's, I think, been the
Yep.
problem lately, is the Ducks don't go big, and part of it is the money, which I get you, and I know a lot of you out there are automatically thinking it. You're saying Corey Perry, and the amount he's making, and he's not doing the same, which of course, I mean that's been something we've talked about a lot. But you've got money tied up in Kesler, Perry, and Getzlaff, so it's been part of the issue, and obviously you want to keep on Henrique. So some of these values, and then you're also paying Cam Fowler now 6.5 million. You're paying Lindholm 5.2, and Manson 4.1, which obviously those are core guys. You need to keep those guys as well. So
Absolutely.
I would like to see them go big, Eddie. I just think it's a weird situation because if they're able to put Kessler on the LTR for the extent of the season, but at some point he's going to want to come back, and then when that cap goes down, it's a weird situation because you can't keep him on that forever. So the other thing, which I don't even want to go this route, but is if he does have to retire. That's the sad part of this. I mean, I really hope he doesn't have to, but I mean, we might have to prepare ourselves for that too, Eddie.
Yeah, I mean, you said that my heart just broke right now. Like, man, I really hope that he does not have to retire. I hope it just, he had a little setback and he's gonna work at it, and they're gonna help him, and he's gonna be the catcher we know. Like, I hate to see players retire not on their own time. It breaks my heart for any team. It doesn't matter if you're, Kopitar over there for the Kings. I would never want to see a player be forced to retire. But I mean, the reality of it, hockey's a physical sport. It demands a lot of you. So I mean, that possibility is there. But I mean, Kessler's he's not going to just roll over on his back and put his legs up and surrender. He's going to fight to the fullest. And if he actually has to retire, it's going to be because he physically can't do it. So yeah, I want to throw in there too. I actually have experience with Paul Stastny. I met him when I was in Colorado. I was stationed in the Army over there. He's a great player. He's a great guy. He's a fan favorite. He was always the first one to show up to practice and the last one to leave, and he would always stay over there and help the younger guys too. Um, if we actually did acquire him, free agency, it'd be a good pickup, and fans would instantly, be a fan favorite. I can see, fans buying a Paul Stastny number 26 jersey quickly.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, you have personal experience, so I mean, you've seen him play over there, and you've interacted with him. Like I said, I'm a fan. I'm down with bringing him in. I think you've got some of these other options out there. I think Joe Thornton. I think that's if you're going to do like a 1 year type thing maybe, but I wouldn't go that route. I think Tavares obviously is the highest scoring option out there, but it would probably cost too much. So, I mean, those, options out there, I think of the top ones, I like Stastny the most. But I'm afraid I hope the Ducks don't, go lower and try to go down, for Mark Letestu or just bring back Vermette, something like that. I really hope they don't do that if Kesler's not going to come back. I mean, there's just so many variables right now, unfortunately, and this news is just fresh that you can't really figure out what the Ducks are going to do. Obviously, free agency is still coming up July 1st, and then we've got the draft, coming up in about a month. So there's still some time, but I'm really curious to see what the Ducks are going to say or Kessler's going to say, if anything, in the next couple of weeks, or if any other kind of news is going to come out. Sometimes, they're pretty quiet about stuff, and then they'll post it later. So, unfortunately, I think the Ducks do have some options. I think that they can do some things internally if they have to. And if they want to go big in free agency, I think that they can. It's just a question of whether or not if they will. And, we've seen, Murray do more things around the draft and in the summertime than obviously during the season with the trade deadline. So I'm not 100% positive that things are going to be fixed, but I mean I have some hope, Eddie, that Murray will do something over the summer, or else everyone's already mad right now about Carlisle. So I mean
Yep.
and there's people that are mad about Murray too. I mean because Murray wants to keep Carlisle. So those of you out there that have said, oh, let's get rid of Carlisle, well, Carlisle's not going anywhere because Murray's there. So we're kind of stuck with what we have right now if you don't like what we have. And I'm just hoping that Murray can do some stuff in the summer if indeed this thing with Kessler goes down the way it goes, if he's not able to play for, a long stretch of the season or not at all, or what's going to happen. I mean, it's a huge blow. And I heard about this last night. I was just like, are you kidding me right now? Like, he may miss, I could see, oh, he misses, the first month or two, and now they're saying he's gonna miss, possibly the season. I mean, that's a OMG moment. It's like, really? It's like, are you kidding me right now? And it kind of comes out of the blue. We really thought we were done with all this injury stuff. Obviously, the thing about Miller wasn't really new. I mean, we knew that there was a hand issue, but he's just having a little surgery on there, so that wasn't a big thing. And it's just kind of a shock. I mean, I'm still in shock. It's not even been 24 hours, Eddie, and I'm just sitting here going, wow. As we kind of tried to prepare for the show, and we weren't really going to talk too much about this, but we kind of did because of the situation at hand.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Like I when I found out about it, I sent you that text, and in my mind, I wanted to hit shift and the numbers on my keyboard, because those are the thoughts I had that I can't say on the show. Like, yo, come on, I thought we were over this. This is unbelievable. Like, man, like I reiterated before, Kessler's health and recovery is the most important thing, but man, can we catch a break a little bit? Like, hockey gods, come on, give us a little bit of a little tap. Give us a break a little bit. Come on.
Yeah,
It's heartbreaking news.
yeah, you want to get something out of this. And the Ducks keep getting all these injuries and whatnot, so it's a pain. So we're gonna keep monitoring that situation as stuff comes up. We may have another podcast sometime maybe before the draft. I don't know. We'll have to see if more news comes up. But the other big thing going on too right now, and this is kind of a big deal, I guess, is the Stanley Cup Final, right, Eddie? We've got two teams here, Vegas and Washington. I think you're leaning towards Washington winning this. I'm leaning towards Vegas. Just what's your overall thoughts on this series as it's going to unfold here in a couple days?
Well, I picked Washington. I kind of relate them to the Ducks a little bit. They've been known as the chokers in the East. Um, the Game 7 situations with Bruce Boudreau back in the day. Um, I think Ovechkin deserves the cup. He's electrifying. He has that energy. When he scores, it reminds me when I was playing hockey in my youth days, and I try to mimic Paul Karier, Timo Solani scoring. Even as an adult now playing beer league, when I score like a big goal, I try to like jump on the glass and just for that second, I think I'm a big star player. I really think they deserve a cup, but it's not going to come easy. Vegas has been those teams that It's pretty much, I guess I want to say, a Cinderella versus a fairy tale story. Vegas came over there with that shooting that happened, unfortunately, and then you know in the Eastern Conference you have that Cinderella that's never ever advanced toward that, and never since I think it was '98 the last time they actually went to Stanley Cup Final and lost to the Bolts. I mean, both teams deserve it, but it's gonna come down to whoever wants it more, whoever puts that extra effort. So, I mean, I know you have Tampa Bay, or I'm sorry, you have Vegas winning, but I'm going for Washington. So, what are your thoughts on Vegas? Like, why do you pick them?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of have mixed feelings, and I don't know if other people have this too. It's like, I mean, you're excited for Vegas because it's their first season and they're in the Stanley Cup Final, but then you're also kind of annoyed by it because it's their first season and they're in the Stanley Cup Final. It's like it's kind of like a love hate. Like, I'm happy for them. It's a little bit annoying because it's their first season. They went through their whole draft expansion and they got all the players they did, and obviously William Karlsson's on there and he's tearing it up, which Ducks fans aren't want to talk about, and Shea Theodore's on there too, another one we don't want to talk about. Even Luca Sbisa from back in the day is on the team, so you got some former Duck connections on there. I mean, you got Smith Pelly also on Washington too, but you have those connections in there, and I think I mean, we'll kind of break down a couple things. They're not really analyzing this series, too, in depth, but we'll talk about some things here about what we think. I think a big thing is I think the goalie situation, Eddie. I think
Oh
Hope's,
yeah.
Hope's been amazing. Fleury's been just stupid amazing. I mean, his goals against is 1.68 in the playoffs. His save percentage is .974. I mean, that's just crazy. I mean, and I'm not taking away from Hope. I mean, Hope's done great too. I mean, he's at 2.04 and .924 on his save percentage. So I mean, he's got great numbers too. But Hope's 12-6 and Fleury's 12-3. I think Fleury. I mean, if Vegas is going to get some wins in this series, and I think this is going to be a low scoring series. I don't know. I could be wrong. Maybe it's high scoring, but I think if Vegas is able to pull this out, and I know you and I have kind of talked about this, we definitely think it's going to go at least 6, most likely 7 games. I think Fleury might have to steal a couple of these games in order for him to win, and I mean, hope he could do the same on the other side. So I really, to me, Eddie, I think the goalie situation is going to be key in this. One of the big keys in this series.
Oh, absolutely. It's gonna be a goaltender's game. Um, Marc-Andre Fleury scares me. He's been there. He keeps calm, cool, and collected under pressure. And then his team overcomes adversity. They adapt to whatever outcome comes. I was one of those people like, oh, Winnipeg, they're big and they're fast. They're matching Vegas's speed, but you're adding that physical edge. The first game, Vegas felt them out. Fortunately for them, they lost. But then they adapted to their play and they rose to the occasion and beat them. Like, wow. A little fun fact too. People that and if you're one of those people that actually threw a bet on Vegas to win the Stanley Cup at the beginning of the season, if you bet $100 on them to win the Stanley Cup, if they actually do win, it's going to be $50,000 right now, and Vegas is offering you a get out of jail free card, or for them, they're offering you $10,000 to buy back your bet card. So yeah, if you guys are one of those people that bet, and I mean we're friends, hey, drinks on you. I mean, either way, if you want to cash in that 10,000 or 50,000, but uh, back to what we're talking about, it's going to be a fun series. It's going to be a close game, and I really think it's going to be led down to the bottom six players, like whoever those bottom six can rise up and score. Both teams are going to be relying on the superstars to get the goals, like the Carlsons, Ovechkins, Backstroms, Kuznetsovs. It's going to come down to it, and like I told you before, um, it's probably going to be funny if it's Game 7 and either Shea Theodore or Smith Pelly scores a game-winning goal for that Game 7. I mean, we're going to get like, man, like love hate right there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. If that's what it comes down to, and I think you're right. I think part of this comes down to, I mean, I think Vegas is a little bit more balanced, with their speed and their scoring's kind of distributed throughout the lineup. And kind of against Washington with their big guns. I mean, obviously, of course, Ovechkin's one of the big ones, as big as they get. But like you mentioned, Kuznetsov, he's got 11 goals in the playoff. Oshie's got 7 as well. So, they're attacking too. I mean, even Smith Pelly's got 4 goals. So you've got scoring going on, on Washington as well. You got a couple of big name players. Vegas has got a couple of big guys too. Not as high scoring as Ovechkin and Kuznetsov have been, but I think it's going to be who's going to shut down who more. And like we said, it goes to the goalies and it goes to the defense too. And it's going to be interesting. I think, and you can speak about this. The other part of this equation that maybe some people don't talk about, or maybe people can't really talk about because they don't play the game like you currently play hockey, is the time off here. You've got Vegas who's going to have a week off before they go into this. And it's that old debate of, hey, we got a week off. We're gonna, rest up and be healed. We're gonna be good to go. Versus, well, we're not in game, mode. We haven't played for a week, So, what do you think about that? Do you think that that's gonna hurt or help Vegas? Especially come game one on Monday.
It's gonna hurt. I mean, in my experience, just playing club level, beer league, rec league, whatever, having time off, it's bad. It's never good. I mean, you have that psychological factor of if a player had a bad game or a bad series, they had that extra time to think. You just kind of get complacent. I mean, having time off is never a good thing for any athlete, not even hockey, like any sport you play. I mean, if you're injured, that's one thing, but I mean, when you're not and you're healthy, you want to go at it, ride the momentum. The Washington Capitals back-to-back shutouts. Uh, Holtby's he's riding a high momentum right now, and they're ready to go. Like it's they probably drank way too many like Red Bulls right now, and they're just ready to just fire off. Um, yeah, I've never think that having time off is a good thing, and the way the schedule is set, I mean, no one can control it besides NHL. But I mean, I really feel that Washington's gonna come in there and they're gonna, ride their momentum and take advantage of Vegas having that time off. And I guess Vegas seems a little bit cocky with their videos, and I'm sure the players see that Lamborghinis
Social
and
media,
stuff.
yeah.
Exactly. I think Vegas might have the Vegas flu on that first game, but there's no way that this game's gonna be done soon. It's probably gonna go in 6 or 7. That's my prediction. But I'm pulling for Washington, and I think Washington's gonna take the series. I'm sticking to that.
Yeah, I
So
feel you, and I'm going the other way. I'm going with Vegas, and I think they're gonna, pull it out. But I mean, we agree that it's gonna be definitely a hard fought series. I think you're right, though. I think
yes,
one key for sure is going to be that first 20 minutes of Game One to really see how Vegas comes out. I mean, like you said, yeah, you play right now, and you know how it is when you don't play for a while. If they're going to be rusty, and if they come out that first period a little bit slow, and the Capitals score, we'll see what happens. I mean, it's been a weird playoffs. The Capitals had some interesting series. They've gotten behind and then they've come back and they've won. Like you said, they're on a high. It looked like Tampa Bay was going to win. Tampa Bay, really outplayed them in Game 5 and took it to them, and then Washington turned around and smacked down Tampa Bay in Game 6 and 7. So I'm excited. I think it's going to be a good series. And whether you're rooting for Washington like Eddie is, or you're like me going for Vegas, something's got to give here. Either you're going to have an expansion team that's going to win in their first year, or you're going to have Ovechkin finally getting the cup. So it's good either way. Something exciting is going to come from this. That's the one thing I guess you could look at, Eddie, whether or not you're rooting for either team.
oh yeah, definitely. I think the biggest winners are gonna be us fans, just watching the game, and it's every cup I see, it's awesome. Like whether back in '07 when the Ducks won, or last year when Pittsburgh won, just seeing the cup get raised and seeing everyone's face on that team, just knowing how hard they work. I mean, yeah, it's kind of bittersweet. Like even when I saw LA and the Kings won, like yeah, I was like hated it, had to drink that beer extra, faster. But hey, you know what? Good for them. They earned it, and Each player fought hard, though. I think the biggest winners from the Stanley Cup Final is going to be us fans. I mean, I have people, my family members, texting me like, "Oh my God, do you see that Vegas team? They're going to Stanley Cup." They never watch hockey at all. But I mean, it's great for the sport. It's going to bring in new fans. Like, okay, wait, a brand new team's in the Stanley Cup Final. Like, I mean, I think we all win. We get to see a great series, the best of the best. It's going to be some of the best hockey we've seen in a while. That's my prediction. And like I said, we're all going to win because we're going to watch every single game. Like, even if you're still bitter about the Ducks losing, I bet you're still going to like just peek that eye and like, oh wait, what's going on? And watch at minimum the highlights and see what's going on. So
Yeah, absolutely. And we have a poll question up. It's on the TPN Twitter, and the voting's pretty close. It's like 55 to 45%. Those of you think Vegas. So I mean, it's a pretty good split there of who thinks going to win this Stanley Cup final. So tune into that. Hopefully, you'll see what happens. We're going to try and have a show for the draft and free agency. And then if something else comes up with the Ducks, we may have something else in between. And we'll go from there. Don't forget also to check out tpnhockey.com. We've got a t-shirt sale going on there right now. You can get, trying to clear out some things so you can get some shirts for low price. So check that out as well. And hopefully we'll be back in maybe a week or two. And let's go Ducks.
let's go Ducks.